My grandmother never wrote down a single recipe. Everything was a pinch of this, a handful of that, and you'll know when it's ready. When she passed away, those recipes went with her. If your Appalachian grandma was the same, measuring with her hands, cooking by feel, and never opening a cookbook, this video is for you. Today, I'm sharing 10 lost Appalachian recipes that grandmothers made every day but never wrote down. Most of these are disappearing. Some are already gone, but we're going to save them right here, right now. Let's get into it. Number 1. Appalachian stack cake. This wasn't just dessert. This was a wedding tradition. When couples got married in the mountains, they were too poor to afford a fancy cake. So the community made one together. Each wedding guest brought a single cake layer. The bride's family stacked them high, with dried apple filling in between. The more layers, the more loved the couple was. Some had 5 layers, some had 12. The cake itself was simple: flour, lard, molasses, and spices. Dense, barely sweet, and slightly dry. But after sitting for a day or two, the moisture from the apple filling soaked into the layers, turning it soft, spiced, and delicious. The recipe? Never written. Passed down by watching, tasting, and learning how the batter should feel. Today, you can still find stack cakes at mountain festivals, but the tradition of making them together as a community gift? That's almost gone. Number 2. Soup beans. If you grew up in Appalachia, you ate soup beans at least once a week, probably more. This was the backbone of mountain cooking. Dried pinto beans, slow cooked in a big pot with a piece of salt pork, fatback, or a ham bone. Seasoned with nothing but salt, pepper, and maybe a pinch of onion. Grandma started the beans in the morning and let them simmer all day on the back of the wood stove. By dinner time, the broth was thick, creamy, and rich with flavor. You served soup beans over cornbread, breaking the bread right into the bowl and eating it with a spoon. Leftovers got even better. Some families ate them 3 or 4 days in a row, and nobody complained. Why didn't Grandma write it down? Because there was nothing to write. You didn't measure beans. You grabbed a handful. You didn't set a timer. You just knew. Soup beans weren't a recipe. They were a daily ritual, a way of life. Number 3. Fried apples. Every fall, the apple trees in the mountains produced more fruit than any one family could eat fresh. So Grandma found 100 ways to use them, and one of them, the simplest, was fried apples. She'd peel and slice apples, toss them in a cast iron skillet with butter, sugar, and cinnamon, and cook them slow until they turned soft, caramelized, and golden brown. Fried apples showed up at breakfast alongside biscuits and sausage gravy. They appeared at dinner next to pork chops. They were spooned over cornbread for dessert. Some grandmas added a splash of water or apple cider. Some used white sugar, some used brown. A few added nutmeg or cloves. But no one wrote it down. You just learned by standing next to Grandma at the stove, watching her hands, smelling the cinnamon, and tasting along the way. Cooking tip: use firm apples like Granny Smith or Rome. Soft apples turn to mush. Number 4. Cornbread in a cast iron skillet. Appalachian cornbread was not sweet. It was not cakey. It did not have sugar in it. And if you added sugar, Grandma would give you a look that could stop your heart. Real mountain cornbread was made with cornmeal, buttermilk, eggs, a little salt, and baking powder. That's it. The secret? A screaming hot cast iron skillet, greased with bacon fat or lard, sitting in the oven until it was almost smoking. You poured the batter into that sizzling skillet, and it formed a golden, crispy crust on the bottom and edges, while staying soft and crumbly in the middle. Cornbread went with everything. Soup beans, fried potatoes, greens, chili, stew. You crumbled it into a glass of buttermilk for a quick snack. You used it to soak up every last drop of pot liquor. Grandma didn't need a recipe. She made cornbread every single day for 60 years. Her hands knew exactly how thick the batter should be, how hot the pot of bake, how long to bake. Number 5. Sawmill gravy. If you've heard of biscuits and gravy, you've heard of sawmill gravy, even if you didn't know the name. This was a breakfast staple for loggers, coal miners, and farmers. Cheap, filling, and made from almost nothing. After frying up sausage or bacon, Grandma would leave the grease in the pan, sprinkle in some flour, and stir it into a roux. Then she'd slowly pour in milk, whisking constantly, until it turned thick, creamy, and peppery. You poured that gravy over hot, fluffy biscuits, and you had a meal that could fuel a man through a 10-hour workday in the woods. Some grandmas made it with sausage, some with bacon. A few made it with just butter and flour when meat was scarce. But none of them measured. They eyeballed the flour. They poured the milk until it looked right. They seasoned it until it tasted right. Cooking tip: if your gravy gets too thick, add more milk. Too thin? Cook it longer. Number 6. Fried taters and onions. This was the ultimate comfort food. Simple, cheap, and delicious. Grandma would slice up potatoes, usually leftovers from last night's boiled potatoes, and fry them in bacon grease with sliced onions until everything turned golden brown and crispy on the edges. You seasoned it with nothing but salt and pepper. That's all it needed. Fried taters and onions appeared at breakfast with eggs, at lunch with cornbread, at dinner next to pork chops or ham. Leftovers? There were. Never leftovers. The key was the cast iron skillet and the bacon grease. That's what gave it the flavor. Cooking it in vegetable oil just isn't the same. Grandma didn't write down a recipe because there was nothing to write. Slice, fry, season, eat. Cooking tip: don't stir too much. Let the potatoes sit and develop a golden crust before flipping. Number 7. Buttermilk biscuits. If there's one recipe that defines Appalachian cooking, it's biscuits. But Grandma's biscuits weren't made from a tube or a mix. They were made from scratch, by hand, every single morning. Flour, lard, or butter, buttermilk, baking powder, and salt. That's it. Grandma would work the dough just enough to bring it together, never overworking it, because that makes tough biscuits. She'd pat it out, cut rounds with a biscuit patter or a drinking glass, and bake them in a hot oven until they were golden and fluffy. Fresh biscuits were served at every meal. Breakfast with sausage gravy, lunch with butter and honey, dinner soaking up the last of the soup beans. The secret to perfect biscuits? Cold fat, a light hand, and years of muscle memory. Baking tip: don't twist the biscuit cutter. Press straight down. Twisting seals the edges and prevents rising. That kind of skill doesn't come from a recipe. It comes from making biscuits 6 days a week for 50 years. Number 8. Chocolate gravy. Yes, you read that right. Chocolate gravy. This wasn't a dessert, even though it sounds like one. It was breakfast. Grandma would make a roux with butter, flour, cocoa powder, sugar, and milk, just like making sawmill gravy, but sweet instead of savory. You poured it over hot biscuits and ate it with a fork. It was rich, chocolatey, slightly gritty, and beloved by every kid in the house. Some folks think chocolate gravy sounds weird, and maybe it is, but if you grew up eating it, it's pure nostalgia in a bowl. Chocolate gravy was a weekend treat, a special occasion breakfast, or a way to make kids happy when times were hard. Cooking tip: whisk constantly to avoid lumps, and don't let it boil or it'll turn grainy. Today, you can still find it in parts of Appalachia and the Ozarks, but it's rare. Most people have never heard of it, let alone tasted it. Number 9. Fried pies. Fried pies were the original hand pies. Portable, delicious, and made with dried fruit because that's what you had in winter. Grandma would rehydrate dried apples or peaches, cook them down with a little sugar and cinnamon, and spoon the filling onto circles of biscuit dough. She'd fold them in half, crimp the edges with a fork, and fry them in hot lard until they turned golden brown and crispy. You'd dust them with sugar while they were still warm, and you had a dessert that could rival anything from a bakery. Fried pies were packed in lunch boxes, taken on long trips, and given to kids as after-school treats. Frying tip: don't overfill them or the filling will burst out, and keep the oil at a steady medium heat. Too hot and they burn outside while staying trapped, raw inside. Today, you can buy fried pies at gas stations and truck stops, but they're not the same. Grandma's fried pies were made with love, lard, and whatever fruit the mountains provided. Number 10. Vinegar pie. When you didn't have lemons, you used vinegar. When you didn't have eggs, you made it work anyway. That's how vinegar pie was born. This was a Depression-era dessert made with sugar, butter, flour, vinegar, and water, baked into a sweet, tangy custard-like filling. It sounds strange. It sounds like it shouldn't work, but it does. The vinegar gives it a brightness almost like lemon, and the sugar balances it perfectly. Vinegar pie was served at church dinners, funerals, and family gatherings. It was cheap, easy and surprisingly delicious. Grandma didn't write down the recipe because she didn't need to. She'd been making it since she was a little girl. Baking tip: use white vinegar or apple cider vinegar. Don't use balsamic or it'll taste weird. Today, vinegar pie is almost extinct. Most people have never heard of it, let alone tasted it. But for those who remember, it's a taste of home, of hard times, and of making something sweet out of almost nothing. These 10 recipes weren't written in cookbooks. They weren't posted on blogs or shared on social media. They lived in the hands and hearts of Appalachian grandmothers, passed down through touch, taste, and memory. Most of these recipes are disappearing. Some are already gone. But as long as we remember them, as long as we talk about them, as long as we try to make them, they're not lost. Not yet. Which one do you remember? Which one did your grandma make? Drop a comment. Share your story. Let's keep these traditions alive together. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.